Hello and welcome. The information you will find here were originally intended for my static group, but over time I meant for them to be condensed in a video available to everyone. I'll try my best to be as brief as possible, so let's dive right into it. Before we move to the fight, I will quickly explain the thought process that I used during my analysis. Every mechanic in the game has an objective. The difficulty of completing said mechanic can be split in two different aspects: puzzle solving and execution. If I am to raise the difficulty of a phase in the fight, my options would be to either change the mechanic completely or to modify these two aspects by adding puzzle elements such as debuffs, for example, or by increasing the execution's complexity, such as decreasing the available save spots. It could also very well be a mix of both of these. Now, moving on with the fight, we can split it in three different phases. Let's examine the first one, the neutral phase. Although not much is happening here, the boss will use a variety of attacks that can be exploited to increase the execution difficulty of the other two phases. Warder's Wrath is your raid-wide AoE, and Heavy Hand is the tank buster. The latter might require a tank swap. Pitiless Flail is a line AoE with a knockback effect on a marked target, which is followed up by True Oli, indicated by a share marker around the same target. There's definitely something missing here, but it's hard to pinpoint anything of note, so I don't want to waste too much time on it. Just keep in mind that whatever can hinder the ability of executing the True Oli share correctly may very well be a good guess. Gowler's Flail is an Alpha Arena cleave, and the ability you should really keep your eyes peeled for. It has an 8.5 second cast time, which is definitely too long for a simple cleave. For the sake of comparisons, Giga Slash from E10S, which is also a Alpha Arena cleave, has a 6 seconds cast time. I think it's safe to say that Gowler's Flail can develop into a sequence of different animations that results in different AoEs. The second Heart of Darkness from E9S is a sequence of 2 animations, and its cast time is 10 seconds. The third Heart of Darkness from the same fight is a sequence of 3 animations, and its cast time is 13.5 seconds. Therefore, I believe it will be a sequence of 2 animations. As for the animations themselves, it's worth noting that there is no spread in normal mode. Spread and stacks, just like a lot of other very simple abilities, are really immediate to grasp but are versatile tools for developers, as they can be easily mixed and mashed together with other mechanics. I'm guessing that one of the animations would be a spread of some form. A proton wave spread, or clock formation, would work very well with Alpha Arena cleaves. While for example, if we were to put a Dynamo or Donut AoE, that could easily be paired with single targeted AoE spread to create a tight execution movement. A point blank AoE may also work for the same reasons. Now let's move on to the Intemperance Phase. This phase begins after the Intemperance cast, which will change and split the arena in 4 quadrants. Every quadrant will have a tower of 3 elemental cubes. Throughout my recordings, I've noticed that the elemental cubes combinations create 3 different patterns, and although the towers spawn on random quadrants, their positions are always fixed between each other, which means that in pattern number 1, going clockwise from the tower with 3 fire cubes, we'll always find the one with 1 ice and 2 fire. We can recognize each pattern by looking at how many towers with cubes of the same element are there. 2 towers indicate pattern number 1, 1 tower indicates pattern number 2, 0 towers indicate pattern number 3. It's very curious that there is a way for us to discern each pattern, although I'm not so sure how it's going to play out in Savage. Intemperance will also inflict a debuff called Hot Spell or Cold Spell, and based on the one you receive, you need to go to the quadrant with a cube of the opposite element. The debuff lasts 15 seconds and is refreshed and swapped by the cube explosion. The first time is refreshed when it reaches 1 second, the second and third time is refreshed when it reaches 6 seconds. It is worth noting a few things. We are able to see the debuff over the head of our party members in the field. Usually these are hidden when they don't provide information for us. Also, there is always 2 save spots, which is something that in Savage just cannot happen. If there are multiple save spots, they either have to be all used by the players or decreased by mechanics or boss abilities. Thinking about this mechanic more thoroughly, our objective is to reach the save spot, Therefore, hindering our ability to move would result in an increased difficulty. This is very easily obtained by adding a debuff that would force players to specifically move to a certain quadrant. A tether type debuff is the one that quickly comes to mind, more specifically the kind used in T11 of Final Coil in the Kalia fight, called Nanospore Jet Alpha and Beta. These pair people together and force them to not go too far from each other, while simultaneously keep away from the ones with the opposite tether, as they all execute mechanics that require them to move. A more recent and modified version of this is present in the O12 Savage fight against Final Omega, and used during the patch mechanic. Continuing with the abilities used during this phase, we have Intemperance Torment, which is the move that triggers the countdown to the detonation of the cubes. In the second Intemperance phase, the boss will also use a Gowler's Flail towards the end. This is the last point that I want to touch upon. The position of this ability is a little strange because the Intemperance phase is already finished, so it doesn't do much to increase the execution difficulty. Despite this, I believe there is a hint of things to come. Remember, the normal mode fight doesn't use the full duration of the debuffs. We also already guessed that Gowler's Flail is going to have 2 animations. So if we imagine that this Alpha Arena Cleave is the second animation and we tinker a little bit with the position of the cast, we can make the first animation go off at the same time as the cube explode, and then create a sense of urgency of movement with the second animation coming right after. This is further suggested by the fact that the boss does not auto-attack or move up until the end of the phase, almost as if it was meant to do something. Let us now try to imagine and wrap this whole phase together. We are receiving 2 debuffs, one that will force us to go to the opposite element, and the other which, in some way, will eliminate one of the 2 save spots where that element is present. Everyone is now using both of their save spots, and the boss begins casting Gowler's Flail, and its animation are going to be spread into a half arena cleave. The spread will go off together with the cube's explosions, our elemental debuff will change, and the movement impairing debuff will fade away, allowing us to avoid the Alpha Arena Cleave that is coming. As we reposition again after the cleave, the boss will inflict on us the new debuff once more. I'm expecting to see something very similar to this, as we have increased both the puzzle solving and execution difficulty. In the beginning, although it doesn't do much, the boss will probably still cast Intemperate Torment, as that allows us to familiarize with the new debuff. While for the second and third part, we will probably have to resolve the debuffs together with a Gowler's Flail sequence. Let's move now to the final phase, which begins after the cast of Shining Cells, which changes the arena and divides it into white and red sections. Notice how both the inner and outer ring have a total of 8 sections, just like the left and right side of the arena. Shortly after, the boss will begin casting Aether Chain, and based on its animation and the element showed, those sections of the arena will explode at the end of the cast. This effect will be combined with Gowler's Flail to create Aether Flail, which is an Alpha Arena Cleave that blows up the sections of the arena of the respective element. We already speculated a lot on Gowler's Flail in the first phase, so I think you can guess as well where this is going. 2 animations with different elements that force us to jump quickly between one section and the other. Something worth mentioning is that this is the only other phase where the boss uses Pitiless Flail, a knockback effect paired with sections that require careful movements and the arena sides being smaller could definitely be a deadly combination. I also wondered if the debuffs from the Intemperance phase will show up here again, but I quickly ruled out that option because the boss is gaining an hidden status effect when it's casting Aether Flail. The hidden status effect is called Powerful Light or Powerful Fire, depending on which sections are going to blow up, so there is no mention of an ice element whatsoever. I expect this phase to be more intensive on the execution itself. The arena is definitely the key point and worth paying attention to, and whatever can make it more difficult for us to reach the correct tile is a good enough guess. This phase concludes with a final raid-wide AoE called Slam Shot, which restores the arena as it was during the neutral phase. Well guys, that is basically it. Savage is right around the corner and we don't know for sure what is going to happen, but it's definitely fun to speculate and imagine. That being said, this is the end of the video. I hope it was interesting for you and I wish you good luck. Thank you and see you soon.